What did George say? You'd be like, it has to be like poetry, like it rhymes. No, I like, what was it? The clip of him like looking at a formation of a tornado. That doesn't really apply to what we're talking about. It's just funny because Martin Scorsese, you watch like him behind the scenes of like a movie he did in the 80s and him like now, he'll be just he's still the same, just
Yeah, it's
older.
the same. Yeah.
It's so weird.
Who do you think overachieved? Like, so if we're talking about who had the most potential and we're saying Scorsese, who do you think had the least potential? Obviously, all of these guys had high potential, but
You cut out there just for a second. You said it. You said who like peaked. I'm sorry.
well, okay. So I was saying we're talking about who had the highest potential, and we agreed it's Scorsese.
Mm-hmm.
But who do you think overachieved? Like, who had the lowest potential out of these five guys?
Um, lowest potential. Such a weird thing because they all. It's. I mean, it's weird to say they all succeeded. You know, like some of them succeeded really fast, and that's to me that's George Lucas. Like, I don't want to say he was just lucky, and that's what happened to Star Wars. No, there's definitely talent with what he did with Star Wars. Obviously, he did Graffiti, American Graffiti, and THX, and that was him, being a good filmmaker. But you look into what made Star Wars great, and it was the editing, George Lucas's, John Williams' score, Ralph McQuarrie's art design, and the charming and uplifting performances of our three leads and R2-D2 and C-3PO. And I think George Lucas might be my answer. And that's not saying anything like he's a bad filmmaker or anything. A lot of people would say he is. But I don't know. I feel like George Lucas was lifted by a phenomenal team around him. At least with Star Wars.
You know, I've always been a prequel defender, and I'm not going to get too far into it now. I mean, everyone loves the prequels now. But I've loved the prequels since you've known me, since I saw them.
Yes.
I think that those are great movies. I defend Hayden Christensen's performance. I think it was perfectly played.
I'll defend the performances to a point. But if we're talking about him trying to capture great moments, it's very few and far between. He was probably really focused on the technology, how scenes looked, at least in a CGI level, and how scenes were framed, which Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith look good. And have some really solid performances. Ewan McGregor does great the entire trilogy. I do not care what anyone says. But if we're talking like dialogue scenes or even some action scenes, if we're going to say George Lucas is directing and even writing, it's not the greatest. Especially when he was, I'm not saying he was elderly when the prequels came out, but he was a little older. I mean, they all were. And he was stupid rich, probably, and he didn't have to do a lot, or he probably didn't feel like he had to, because of computer animation.
Okay, you said something. You said he wasn't the best at capturing the moments, and you kind of explained what you meant. With that, I'm going to use a scene from my least favorite of the 6 original films, The Phantom Menace, which I think everyone can agree on is probably the worst of all of them, right?
Of those 6, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Those 6. let's not even talk about the other 3.
Yes.
That'll be another episode. But
Yep. Hell yeah.
Of the Phantom Menace, the pod race. Tell me a more cinematic scene, or not a more cinematic scene, but tell me that doesn't hold up with any cinematic scene in film history.
What, the pod race scene?
Yeah, the pod race scene. There's everything there. There's the stakes, the tension, the obstacles. Like, there's a lot. There's so much on the line. I'd say there's more on the line in the pod race scene than there is in the Duel of the Fates later in the movie.
Whoa. I don't want to devolve this to the Star Wars debate. You can cut this into its own little snippet if you want. But
nah, keep it going.
No. The pod race condensed, if it was its own thing, yeah, you could say that. But I know Anakin's going to make it. It's a prequel. I know he's going to make it. Or maybe you could say that to fucking in the Duel of the Fates. But Duel of the Fates is such an intense and emotional scene. It's a Padawan and Master in their last hurrah against their only Sith Lord that they've seen in 100 years. They don't even know what a Sith Lord even looks like. Qui-Gon probably knows better. Naboo is about to be liberated. If we're just talking about the lightsaber battle, it's choreographed great. The score is amazing. And say you've never watched Star Wars, you don't know what's going to happen to Qui-Gon Jinn. Maybe you watched the original trilogy and you're like, who's this Qui-Gon Jinn guy? Maybe he does live and maybe he retires. Or no, he fucking dies. The pod race scene, don't get me wrong, all the great bits are there with suspense and all this fun stuff, and it's exciting. But at the end of the day, the guy's name is Anakin Skywalker. Okay, so he must make it out, and I don't know. I'm going to say Duel of the Fates is way more. Sorry.
I want to point out what just happened.
Huh.
You just defended a moment in that guy's worst film. And you talked so passionately about it and how it made you feel.
Oh, man. A real gotcha.